Okay, today we're going to talk about cover letters. Certainly something that's required when you're applying for a job. So specifically, we'll talk about what a cover letter is, an outline of how we make it, the pieces, and also the language that's used when you're writing a cover letter. So a cover letter generally accompanies a resume, so you send them in together when you're applying for a job. The cover letter is not a restatement of your resume, though. You're just really picking out some key points that match what the company is looking for, and then you write them into a little narrative. So the cover letter, first it introduces you, then it gives a few reasons why you're good for the job, and a final request is made for an interview. Now, this is probably not a good example, though I don't blame the guy for trying. To whom it may concern. Resume is something for appeal myself. Let's have appeal time. My big reason to have come to Canada, Europe, North and South America travel. So I apply to your shop. I am not a good English user, but when I was in Korea, everybody called me Ace. You are the best, a best. At factory, hotel, farm, restaurant, mart, and so forth. He also continues to say, I am brave enough to fight a wild bear, and I'm strong enough to carry a wild bear, and I'm as fast as a train. Now, I applaud him for his effort. He certainly was earnest in the way that he wrote this. And actually, I do believe he got the job. The company that he was applying to was so impressed with his earnestness that they gave him the job. However, I wouldn't generally suggest this. It's probably better to follow the outline that I'm going to show you today. So a cover letter is, well, like a letter. So if you want to see our email workshop to see some of the requirements for that, I'd suggest you go back and take a look at that. One thing I'd like you to do is check the cover letter form that's on our class website for a good outline of what should be in a cover letter. Why don't you pause right now and go to the website and get that. So here is the cover letter form. So you see basically you have your address and information on the top, the date, the employer's contact information right here. You have a greeting to the person you're writing the letter to. You have your sections where you're describing yourself briefly, how you heard about the job and why this company is a good fit for you. Then you have here reasons why you would be good for the company, and the same is true in this section. And then your closing remarks, you want to ask the person for an interview. Either you tell them you'll contact them later for an interview or ask them if they will contact you. And you'll also want to thank them for reading your cover letter. Your valediction, sincerely, it's a good general use valediction. You're going to sign your name if this is a piece of paper. If it's electronic only, you can type it. But if you have a piece of paper, you're going to both type and sign your name. So, you know, the typed version lets them see it clearly, and the signature is that personalization that says it's you. You'll see this on a lot of the kind of samples called enclosure. Now the enclosure is, I think it's kind of old-fashioned. You don't see it much anymore. An enclosure in the past basically just listed the different files that were enclosed with this file. I think you could probably just leave it out. So why don't you keep this available on your desktop while we're talking about these other topics. Now here's another good example. If you take a look at this one, so it looks a lot like that outline, but it's filled out, well, like a regular cover letter. So why don't you go ahead and click on the example and load that for me and read through it. So the example looks a little bit like this. It's from Joshua Davis, who's at this address. This is the date that he wrote it. This is the person that he's writing to. That person is the Senior Human Resources Manager at White Financial Corporation, and this is their address. So he starts it, Dear Mr. Bellamy. See, Bellamy. He uses his last name to address him. Then he introduces himself. He talks about his work experience. He talks about his coursework, his school experience. And then he summarizes here everything that he said in the cover letter, following it with, I believe because of these reasons, I believe I'm a strong candidate. Okay? Then he would like to discuss his qualifications with you in more detail. That means I'd like to have an interview. So please contact me at this or this. Thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, Joshua Davis. It's a pretty good sample, and I'd say that you could learn a lot from imitating that and copying it in many ways. So why don't you keep that open while we go through some of the other parts of the presentation. Now you'll notice from that sample letter that the cover letters are not that much different from Korean cover letters. Though I'd say that the Korean cover letter is a little bit more of an introduction. So let's start looking at the pieces of the cover letter. So the first is the contact information. So you should have your name, street address, and city, state, and zip code. Now this is a little bit different for Korea. So how would you write your address in Korean? I'm sorry, in English, but your Korean address, right? And so you see here I wrote my office address. I wrote Daniel Craig, and this is the building and number in the building that I'm in. This is the neighborhood, the dong and the gu. Then I wrote for Seoul City plus the zip code, and then South Korea. Now there's a few different ways that you can write this, and all of them are pretty much the same. Also, we have new street address kind of standards in Korea as well, and those match the American standards a little bit more closely. But I know a lot of people don't know their new street address, so the old style is a lot like I wrote here. The company address. So when you're writing to somebody, you should put the name of your contact, their position, their company name, and then their address information. So here, for example, is the information for Google Korea. And by the way, Jason Park is not a real person. I made him up. So Jason Park, Human Resources Hiring Manager, Google Korea LLC, that's their official name. And then this is their address as listed on their website. So then you get into the actual writing. When you're writing the introduction, you want to write some kind of attention getter. And I'll show you some examples of good opening sentences later. You want to write your name, though I think some guidelines disagree with this. I think it's still a good idea to introduce yourself. The reason why you're writing, and so the reason is you're writing for a particular job, most likely. The position that you're interested in, that's probably in the combined with the reason for writing. How you heard about the position. Now, a lot of people will put online database or a website or some other way that they found out about the job. But really what this allows you to do is to name drop. It allows you to include the name of somebody you know who works at the company. Because as we all know, if you know someone working at the company, you're probably more likely to get the job. It's all about connections. Then any specific reason why you're interested in this particular organization. And so this is where you might state that I'm very excited to work at Google Korea because of these reasons. All right. So let me show you some examples. If you click on opening sentences, you'll see this website here. And I'll have you scroll down and just take a look at the variety of openings here. Now they're not all for jobs that are like yours, but some of them will be similar. So take a minute, pause right now, and look through these examples for yourself. I hope you noticed in these that most of these are what I would consider attention getters. Right from the very beginning, they're talking about how eager and how fit you are for this job, and from the very beginning, it's drawing the reader's interest in a little bit. It's a little bit better than just saying, "Hi, I'm Dan, and this is my cover letter." So start off strong and continue that way. Now there are other examples there that please I encourage you to take a look at as well. So you could pause right now and take a look at the introduction examples and some of the full examples, so full cover letters. Go ahead, do that now. Now as you probably noticed looking at those examples, the outline, the body of the cover letter has a few things that are pretty common amongst them. So basically they're providing some kind of narrative, a story, let's say, of why or how that you are a good fit for this job. So the body should not be too long. You're not going into pages in a cover letter. This is one page and oftentimes not even a full page. And you'll notice that even in that page you're using up a lot of space for things like the introduction, the addresses at the beginning of the cover letter. So you're using up a good 4 inches just on that. So you could tell that the text in the cover letter is brief overall. What you should do is pick about 3 good reasons or examples of why you're able to do this job. So be specific, write about things that you have done that could benefit the new employer, and these should generally reflect what you've also written in the resume. So whatever's in the resume should be reflected in that cover letter. So for the conclusion, basically here, this is the last time they're going to read what you wrote, and so make it count, drive your point forward. So you want to thank them for reading and thank them for their time. Tell them that you'll be following up for an interview request, or ask them for an interview in that regard. You may also, as you saw in one of the previous examples, you may also summarize the main points that you had in the rest of your paper. And this is probably a good idea, so because again, it's just reiterating why you are good for this job. Why don't you take a look again at that example cover letter that I was referring to. So here you'll see in the conclusion, what he did was he reiterated the reasons why he thinks that he's a strong candidate, and these match what was written in the body above. Lastly, you're going to write, you're going to put on a signature just like you would with a letter, so you have a valediction, something like sincerely. You're going to sign your name, and you're going to type your name. Make sure to have all those pieces. Now, when we talk about the language use, the thing that you have to consider the most is you have to be confident. People want to hire confident employees. They want you to be at the top of your game. So, be positive. A cover letter is no time to talk about your weaknesses. Use strong language for a confident tone. So for one thing, don't hedge. Now of course there I said don't hedge much, because there's certainly some kind of hedging that you can do that sounds a little stronger. So words like clearly and obviously, without a doubt, certainly, alright? Those are the kind of hedging that give you a little bit more certainty in your writing. However, these kind of things suggest, indicate, estimate, assume, probably, possibly, perhaps, maybe, apparently, seemingly. You get the picture here. This is not stronger language, because what it's meant to do is say not all, or it's really possible, but I'm not sure. Okay, and you want your writing to convey certainty. Another thing you should look at is action verbs. Verbs that show action. Now in this sense there are a number of different verbs that are used in resumes, and those are kind of the same that you'll use in your cover letter. Why don't you pause this video and take a look through these words, especially down here where it talks about teaching skills. And the last thing you want to consider is the Jedi mind trick. For any of you Star Wars fans out there, that's the best way to get people to do what you want them to do. Let me see your identification. You don't need to see his identification. We don't need to see his ID. These aren't the droids you're looking for.